What is going on, everyone? Excited to be back here. It's been a couple of days since we've done a live stream. We are planning to have some more consistent content coming out here over the next couple of weeks. So our schedule, as of right now, and it's going to be subject to change as we get kind of everyone up on our streaming platform. We're doing a preview of Monday Night Football on Mondays. We're going to do a review of kind of Monday Night Football and a preview of Thursday Night Football on Tuesdays. Jumping into a college football preview on Wednesdays. Thursdays is our time to talk about soccer. And then Fridays is going to be our, excuse me, our Thursday Night Football review, and then also our preview of Sunday football. So today, though, I'm going to talk a little bit about the two games, and also I'll be sprinkling in some W content. We have two big games tomorrow, two big games on Wednesday. I'll be doing live streams for both of those as well to get you up to speed on what to expect. So on today's game, we have the Buccaneers versus the Texans and the Chargers versus the Raiders. And it's kind of an interesting two games. I think when you look at the spread, or sorry, you look at the over on the Buccaneers versus Texans, it is 42.5 right now on FanDuel. And I personally looked at this game and think, how is this not going to be a 55, 60-point game? I don't see how either of these teams run the football. And I also think there's a lot of opportunity throwing the football against both of these teams. The Buccaneers on that side offensively wasn't the strongest showing from Baker Mayfield, but you have to like what you saw from Emeka Egbuka coming off an amazing game, 2 touchdowns. Now he gets a Texans defense who was and is a very strong defense, but if they have a weakness, it is in the coverage side of things. It is what it is. They kind of got torched a little bit by the Rams. Matt Stafford was just kind of picking them apart wherever he had an opportunity to. Puka Nacua had 10 catches for 130 yards. That is where he got most of his snaps, was out of the slot, and that is where Emeka gets most of his snaps as well. So something to look for there. But to start with the defenses, though, rushing-wise, the Texans have a strong rushing attack. They posted the 9th best EPA per rush defensively last year, where they had the 7th best. The Buccaneers, they had a strong run defense last year. They have a strong run defense this year. Bijan Robinson was held in check this past game against the Bucs, and I think this is something where you don't want to really take Nick Chubb. I actually took Nick Chubb's under. So Nick Chubb was talked about being the bell cow going into week 1. He only got, I believe, let me pull up the number, 59% of the running back carries in that game. That's not exactly being the bell cow. And honestly, outside of 2 runs, the late part of the game where he had 10 yards in each run, he didn't really look all that good. And that kind of corresponds to how we saw him the last year. So I'm not a big fan of Nick Chubb in this situation. I think the Buccaneers rush defense is going to be strong here. Where they give up some issues, just like the Texans defense, is the passing game. They allow Michael Penix Jr. to throw for 298 yards on 27 of 42 throwing, and that included a 7-catch, 59-yard game from Kyle Pitts, and also an 8-catch, 55-yard game from Drake London, and 6 catches from Bijan Robinson. So this is a nice get-right spot. I think it's primetime game. Baker is going to be ready. C.J. Stroud is going to be ready. This is a nice get-right spot for C.J. Stroud and Nico Collins. They specifically mentioned in the last press conference that they want to get the ball to Nico, but it's not always. We can't always get the ball to Nico. So I look for Nico to have some good touches here. The candidate I'm looking for in this game, though, is Xavier Hutchinson. He had the 2nd highest route run percentage of all Texans wide receivers, and he had 2 first-read targets. Yes, Nico is going to draw most attention. Nico should get most of the catches. The 2 rookies from out of Iowa State are also going to get a lot of attention from fantasy guys. But the real person here is Xavier Hutchinson. When you get the 2nd most route runs out of the entire team, you have to look at that as someone who has an opportunity to get some touches in this game. So I like his receptions. I like putting on some ladder stuff with Xavier Hutchinson as well. And then the other thing I'm really looking at here is the rushing attack, but on the quarterback side. So C.J. Stroud has been phenomenal running the football dating back to last year. He's gone over 11.5 rushing yards in 60% of his games. He just had 32 yards against the Rams. A little bit struggling in pass protection. The Texans had the 5th worst pressure rate over expected rate, which has been basically a measure of how bad was your offensive line. And they get a Bucs team who had the 6th highest pressure rate. And they allow Michael Penix Jr., who is not really a runner, to get 21 yards on 6 carries. So I expect CJ to be running a bit here, getting some yards. And Baker is always a strong likelihood to get some yards as well with his legs. He's gone over 16.5 yards rushing in 63.2% of games as a Bucs quarterback. He had 39 last week versus the Falcons. So, again, the Texans have a great pass rush. They produce the fifth highest pressure rate. That opens up some opportunities for some QB scrambles, especially for a Baker Mayfield. When I'm looking at the over, though, that 42.5, I just really feel like this could be a 55, 60-point game with 300 yards throwing from both quarterbacks. Just seems like that kind of a feel. But jumping over to the other side, the Chargers versus the Raiders, I get pretty much the opposite feel. This feels like a ground and pound day for both teams. The Raiders had a strong-ish rush defense last year. They had an easy test versus the Patriots, but the Chargers rely on the ground attack. That is going to be their bread and butter. Even though Justin Herbert is dynamic, even though they have some phenomenal wide receivers, they want to set the tone with the running game, and that's exactly what Harbaugh likes to do. So when you think about running game, Omarion Hampton is the first person that comes to mind for the Chargers. He saw the majority of carries last week with 15. Najee Harris had 1. But according to Harbaugh, that was the plan the whole time for Najee, was to get 12 to 15. Or Najee, sorry. His workload is going to increase, so I get a little bit worried about pulling an Omarion over in this situation. On the flip side, I like Ashton Jeanty. He did not play very well in his first game and honestly cost himself a lot of yards by being a little bit too gunslinger, a little bit too happy with how he was approaching the holes and kind of missing some of the open holes that he had available to him. But passing-wise, I don't think it's going to be a high-scoring game, but I do think there's some opportunities with some of the pass catchers and what their current props are today. When you look at it, so Drake May had 287 yards this last game against the Raiders. He did a pretty good job of kind of picking apart and getting to a bunch of different wide receivers here. And the Raiders play zone coverage 90% of the time. So when you think about zone coverage, Keenan Allen is always going to be a strong candidate here just for his kind of wily veteran sense. But who I really like here is Quentin Johnson. He produces a 0.61 fantasy points per route run, which is well above his 0.48 against all coverages. And Quentin was third on the team in targets, but he had 7. And he had the second highest run rate route of all players and 6 first read targets. So Quentin Johnson is someone I really like to target in this game as well. I already have a really cool parlay ladder starting with Troy Franklin. I had a 30 to 40 longest reception to go along with Dante Thornton, who I think has another opportunity to get some big yards here. When the Chargers played the Chiefs last game, one of the things I noticed was that Tyquan Thornton specifically attacked them when they were in cover 1, getting over to the sideline and getting a deep ball there, going over 40 yards. Thornton had 4 targets, and his the two targets that really stood out to me in terms of how I anticipate them attacking this defense is the one time in cover 1, man, and you could see Geno audibling, and they were going right to him the whole time. And then also they targeted him deep in a cover 4 look, which is where he hit part of his ladder that I had last week. So his current longest reception prop is over 15.5. Here's the thing. If he's catching the ball, it's probably going to be over 15 yards. His average depth of target was nearly 25 yards, which is absolutely absurd for someone getting as many snaps as he was getting. The other thing I'm looking at here, the Chargers blitzed at the 5th lowest rate so far this year, and they had the 5th lowest pressure rate, which kind of makes sense. And they've allowed they allowed a separation rate in the top half of the league. So again, Thornton's a good look here. Jacoby Myers got a ton of targets last week. Brock Bowers. You really can't go wrong with a lot of these guys, especially given the fact that Jacoby Myers is getting peppered on the low average at the targets, under 10 yards, 10 targets coming out of the slot. He had 6 that were first read targets. So a couple options here from a reception standpoint, but not as big of a fan on yardage here in this game. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. The last thing I would call out is the fact that Justin Herbert looked really good last week using his legs. I anticipate we see him use his legs in this game as well. I like his over on his rushing yards. So that's what I got for you. If you like the content, always make sure to subscribe. Like my X account, like the Parlay Ole Bets X account. Stay tuned as we have more content coming out the rest of the week. If you really like the work and you want to get access to our plays, check out the Discord at Parlay Ole Bets. It's wap.com/parlay-ole-bets. And use the code NFL for 50% off your first month. So that's all I got for you. I hope you enjoyed that. If you have any feedback, let me know. Always open to that as well. Have a great day, everyone. Bye, y'all.